Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Have you ever felt like you were between a rock and a hard place? Maybe that's how you feel right now. Well, that phrase is going to have a whole new connotation for you before this episode is over. Hi, welcome to the Bible for Busy People. My name is Erica. I'm your host, and we've got some really exciting ground to cover today as you and I continue to study this concept of feeling like a fish out of water on this planet. This world is not our home, and that's why it often feels that way. And sometimes we think we've got a really good plan, and then God says, actually, I'm seeing things from this perspective. You have a unique place in history. It's not an accident. The city where you live, the place where you work, the community you volunteer in, the church that you go to, all of these things work like instruments in a symphony in God's plan for your life. Yes, even the bad stuff, the hard notes. So without further ado, I want to invite you to join me because we are about to hang out at the edge of the Red Sea. God has shown me something I've never seen before in His Word, and that's because His Word is alive. Now, a little background before we dive in. I know we've got a water theme going here. If you don't know, there was a time when God delivered His people, the Israelites, from slavery in Egypt. They had escaped. There was 1 million+ people who were en route to the Promised Land when this happened. Are you ready? Exodus chapter 14, beginning in verse 3. Then the Lord gave these instructions to Moses. Order the Israelites to turn back and camp by Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea. Camp there along the shore across from Baal-Zephon. Then Pharaoh will think the Israelites are confused. They're trapped in the wilderness. And once again, I will harden Pharaoh's heart and he will chase after you. Listen to this. I have planned this in order to display my glory through Pharaoh and his whole army. After this, the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites camped there as they were told. Now, let's rewind for just a minute, because you know what? The Lord told His people to turn back. Maybe you feel like you've taken a step back in life, but maybe it's all part of the plan. Okay, verse 5 now. When word reached the king of Egypt that the Israelites had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds. What have we done letting all those Israelite slaves get away? They asked. So Pharaoh harnessed his chariot and called up his troops. He took with him 600 of Egypt's best chariots, along with the rest of the chariots of Egypt, each with its commander. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, so he chased after the people of Israel, who had left with fists raised in defiance. The Egyptians chased after them with all the forces in Pharaoh's army, all his horses and chariots, his charioteers and his troops. The Egyptians caught up with the people of Israel as they were camped beside the shore near Pi-Hahiroth, across from Baal-Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the people of Israel looked up and panicked when they saw the Egyptians overtaking them. They cried out to the Lord and they said to Moses, "Why did you bring us out here to die in the wilderness? Weren't there enough graves for us in Egypt? What have you done to us? Why did you make us leave Egypt? Didn't we tell you this would happen while we were still in Egypt? We said, leave us alone. Let us be slaves to the Egyptians." Are you hearing this? It's better to be a slave in Egypt than a corpse in the wilderness. But Moses told the people, don't be afraid. Just stand still and watch the Lord rescue you today. The Egyptians you see today will never be seen again. The Lord Himself will fight for you. Just stay calm. So the Lord's part there is He fights for us. Our part is we stay calm. Hard, right? Okay, verse 15. Then the Lord said to Moses, Why are you crying out to me? Tell the people to get moving. Pick up your staff and raise your hand over the sea. Divide the water so the Israelites can walk through the middle of the sea on dry ground. Through! And I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will charge in after the Israelites. My great glory will be displayed through Pharaoh and his troops, his chariots, and his charioteers. When my glory is displayed through them, all Egypt will see my glory and know that I am the Lord. Then the angel of God, who had been leading the people of Israel, moved to the rear of the camp. The pillar of cloud also moved from the front and stood behind them. The cloud settled between the Egyptian and Israelite camps. As darkness fell, the cloud turned to fire, lighting up the night. But the Egyptians and Israelites did not approach each other all night. Remember, between your rock and a hard place, God is with you. Let that picture of the pillar of cloud, the pillar of fire remind you of that. Verse 21, then Moses raised his hand over the sea, and the Lord opened up a path through the water with a strong east wind. The wind blew all that night. That's always fascinating to me. It was an instant, turning the seabed into dry land. So the people of Israel walked through the middle of the sea on dry ground with walls of water on each side. Then the Egyptians, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and charioteers chased them into the middle of the sea. But just before dawn, the Lord looked down on the Egyptian army from the pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw their forces into total confusion. So here's what happened. The Israelites and the Egyptians both saw the power of the Lord that day. All of the Egyptians lost their lives. They were swept into the sea. All of the Israelites made it safely through the sea to the other side. We wrap up our time today in verse 30. That is how the Lord rescued Israel from the hand of the Egyptians that day. And the Israelites saw the bodies of the Egyptians washed up on the seashore. When the people of Israel saw the mighty power that the Lord had unleashed against the Egyptians, they were filled with awe before him. They put their faith in the Lord and in his servant Moses. So today, if you find yourself between a rock and a hard place, look at it this way. You're between the rock of ages, the Lord, and a hard place. He's got a plan, and it's going to be more than okay. It's going to be good. You are loved. Thank you for making time for the Bible for Busy People today. If being part of this community is a blessing to you, it's super easy to share this podcast with someone you love. We're all about spreading the hope of Jesus like butter. So if you've got a moment to write a review, boy, we'd really appreciate that. Maybe you need a little prayer today, or you're ready to take that next step with God. I invite you to check out our show notes. You're going to find lots of encouragement there. This podcast is one branch on a tree called Purposely, a podcast network designed with practical podcasts to help you find and thrive in God's purpose for your life. If you've got a pulse, you've got a purpose.